Insert disc 2.
This week we have a very special guest, sometime amigo Chad. He's rejoined us after many weeks away.
Hey.
He's been on assignment, but we're going to talk about Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, so Magic was a big part of our high school lives. We sort of were part of, probably I would call it the second wave of Magic, the second or third wave. Chad, why don't you tell me about the first time that you ever saw Magic the Gathering?
Oh, that was going into ninth grade. It was that summer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember exactly. I don't know if I was at Street Corner or I guess it had to have been that way. I think people were playing it, and I was like, man, that looks really cool. And I remember
now Street Corner was our hometown comics and cards shop.
Yeah. So it was around till like 97. It was definitely in that summer.
And this was the summer of 95.
Correct, yeah. Mm-hmm. So it was like 95, and it had to have been there because I didn't know like Brent yet or any of this.
So were you going to Street Corner before I was?
Yeah, probably because
you already had an interest in comics.
Correct. Yeah. So I was already like buying comics,
right.
In that time. And I remember seeing the game. I was like, man, this looks really cool. And I remember the owner at the time, who was Rick Hoover. He had these packs that you could buy, not like regular card packs, but like pre-made commons and uncommon sets.
Yeah.
And I bought these common sets, and I remember making a deck. It was a green deck, and it was Crawlworm. And I remember I remember the first time basically playing, and it was out on your back like sunroom porch thing playing. I remember like using Crawlworm and stuff like that in giant growths.
I definitely remember playing out on that back deck, and I also remember playing out on my front porch. And what's interesting about both of these surfaces is they're concrete surfaces.
Oh yeah.
And so when I go in for a very aggressive tap, I just scrape the back of the card up.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I used to carry the cards around in my pocket.
Yep.
This is before sleeves or anything like that.
Oh yeah. One of the crazy things about it is pretty early on in the game for me. I like playing, but this like the collectible aspect of it really hit home with me. Like I loved getting and trading and just all that sort of stuff. That was really my big thing. I remember also one of my first interactions with Jamie. We were in the band room and he was playing, and I some like really garbage deck, and I remember him playing at the time with like much better cards, like dual lands and just stuff that I did not have. And I was like, man, I need that stuff.
Right.
And I remember, trying to get that stuff pretty early on and things like that.
Yeah, I started playing about the same time that you did. Of course, our freshman year was different than all the other years because that was the year that you were not in band and I was in the band. But you were a runner, right? Were you a runner that year? You were were not connected at all. And so I made all of these friends that all played Magic, and it was the same thing where I saw these guys and they had all these cards and they were so cool. But I remember going into Street Corner for the first time. And it was like the first time that I'd ever really spent a lot of time, like not at a friend's house, but also unsupervised by parents.
Oh yeah.
And so it was kind of cool. It was like a club, and there were like most of the people were older than I was, but everybody was really nice, and so that was really special. In fact, like a lot of my best Magic memories probably have as much to do with being at Street Corner as anything else.
Sure.
And so, but I remember the first, I bought all of the, like you said, Rick really did it right as far as, I don't know if they still do this or not, but like having the common, the like black common set, $2. And you could get like 20 cards for $2. It was great.
Oh, yeah.
But I remember buying one time, I bought this card from Chronicles. it was like Fire Drake or something like that. It was a red card, and it had this like stone dragon that had fire coming out of it. Do you remember what the name of that card is?
I think you have an accurate name.
Yeah, it was $1.75, and I was like, man, this is just it's so expensive, but I really want this card.
Sure.
And so like little did I know that later on things would be, but that was also where I bought the only alpha card that I now currently have. I bought an alpha regrowth for $7, and we just looked it up, and it's now worth what, 195 or something like
almost
that.
200, yeah.
Yeah, so there were many other cards, of course, that I remember. One like lots of things that I regret. Most of my Magic playing career is full of regret, because either like there was the time that I lost all of my cards because I put them behind the TV in the band room, thinking that no one would take them, and somebody took them.
Right.
And then there was also a time where I traded a dual land for a starter deck.
Right.
And I was like, man, I just want that. I want new cards. And that was always kind of my problem, was that I was always willing to, trade something that was more valuable for like many less valuable things.
Right. Well, I mean, maybe back then a starter deck for a dual land was probably okay.
Pretty comparable.
Yeah, because I mean, the lands back then were like maybe $10, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So you mentioned the collectible aspect of Magic. I guess we should, if you're still watching this and you don't know what Magic the Gathering is, we should probably give a short recap of what it is. Magic was the first game that I'm aware of that falls into the genre of a collectible card game. So it's a game that you play with your friends. But everybody has their own materials that they bring to the table. Everybody has their own cards, and each card has its own rarity, its own function. And when you buy cards, you don't get to pick the cards that you want. If you buy a pack, you get a random selection of cards in which you combine into decks. And of course, there are a billion of these games now. But was Magic the first one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was invented by a PhD mathematician, Richard Garfield.
Yeah, also famous for creating the board game Robo Rally, which is another great thing. Less famous for creating Vampire, the card game.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, that's. Do you remember? I mean, do you have any other aside from like the? Do you remember your first big trade in the Magic world? Like I always remember trading that dual land for the starter deck. Do you have any?
Yeah. So I mean, like I told you, I was like wheeling and dealing for, I mean, pretty early on. I mean, that's like what I was doing. I remember getting probably around 96. I remember getting Alliances had just come out, and the hot card was a card called Balduvian Horde. It's garbage now, but it was like the thing. It was like $25. So there wasn't new cards at that price in a long time. I mean, the stuff wasn't like like it is. That was like the big thing, and I remember trading so much to get this Balduvian. Like I traded a lot to get this Balduvian Horde.
Four play sets of dual lands.
No, it wasn't that. But it was. I knew a Birds of Paradise was in the deal, which was also a big card. Back then.
Yeah, I love Birds of Paradise.
Yeah, and so that was probably the first big trade I did. So I was like probably in 96. And then so come around 96, you were already done.
Right. I burned out quickly because gaming for me has always been a social thing. And all of my friends, except for you that played Magic, graduated the year after I started playing.
Right, sure, yeah.
And so that combined with the fact that I'd lost all of my cards, effectively took me out of the game.
Yep. So I still, I played all throughout high school, and I got Dan to play.
Right.
And so Dan was playing, but then Dan didn't do it for very long either. So Dan jumped in like 97. And pretty much just played in 97.
I guess we should talk about another reason why I stopped playing was because Street Corner comics changed ownership.
It did to Matt and Mike, who were one of the guys at least was very terrible.
Yeah.
He was not a fun person to be around.
And they also relaxed a lot of the regulation around indoor smoking at Street Corner.
Yeah.
And it was a very unpleasant. I remember the last time I walked in there, they were. I remember walking in. They were. The room was entirely smoke filled.
Well, so it's probably very like a grayish purple.
Yeah,
hue.
and From Dusk Till Dawn was playing on a big screen TV, and I was like, you know what, this is not the Street Corner that I know and love.
Yep,
and that was the end.
Yeah,
but they closed down soon after that.
Yeah, they closed in '97 actually.
Oh wow! So they really were only around for they only survived as owners as less than a year. Do you think?
Yeah, it's probably about a year or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kept playing until I guess I probably stopped. Well, no, I mean, I guess I was kind of still playing when I was in high, up until I was done with high school,
mm-hmm.
pretty much. So that's '99, and then I stopped for 2 years. And then started back in 2001.
Do you remember what it was that got you back into it?
Yes, I knew exactly what it was. There's a guy that was in my Japanese class in college who was talking to a guy, and they had cards that were they were looking at cards or something like that, and we were talking about cards, and then his name's Mike Taylor, and so we started talking, and Mike he used to live in right around here, kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. And so we started playing, and then that really sort of jump started us playing again. And so
was there anything that was different about your second round of Magic versus the first round?
Tournaments. That's all I did was go and play in tournaments all the time. Mm. And so I ended up meeting a lot of people, going around and that sort of stuff like that. It's also at that time we had it was right before Dan had moved, or he just graduated college, I guess. So that's a few more years later. But he had, we got him back into the game too, mm-hmm. and stuff like that. But yeah, basically from 2001 till
2006 or so.
Yeah, at least. Maybe.
I think he moved to Virginia in 2006, but you probably continued.
Oh, we did. It's probably 2008 at least. Mm-hmm. So about 7 years of going to tournaments, and so we're not just talking about local things. We're talking about, I mean, I was going to Richmond, 3 times a year for the vintage series things. Mm-hmm. So we'd go down, and I know you went a couple times. I think
I went one time.
Did you go one time? Okay.
And I went, but I came home. I don't even remember where this tournament was. It was somewhere in West Virginia, I think, because I had come home and I drove there.
Okay.
But I don't remember where it was. And the night before, I didn't sleep because it was this weird thing where I was very aware of my teeth.
Okay.
And I was just kept thinking about my teeth are touching. Oh. I don't know. It was a weird time in my life.
Okay.
But anyway, and then the next day I drove to this tournament, which was in a really small card shop. I mean, this particular tournament was very small. Mm-hmm. And there was a guy playing with a deck full of slabbed cards, hard.
Did you go to that thing? Did you happen...
I don't even think we've ever talked about this.
Was this the one in Washington, Pennsylvania you went to?
Yes. Well, that was the only one, so it had to have been.
Yeah. That's okay. I know about that story.
Okay.
I don't know why you went that way, but you did for some reason.
Yeah, it was a weird time. I was still living in Alexandria, and I had this deck with the Flying Men.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and it was. Yeah, I lost. I was out immediately, and I drove a really long way.
Yeah,
and I was just tired. It was a horrible experience.
Yeah. So we played. So we played till about 2007 or something like that. 2008 for about 6-7 years, and then then the Warcraft card game came out.
Mm-hmm.
And so Mike and I started playing the Warcraft card game. And for all purposes, it's probably a better game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really was. But it lacks support. And from a national competition scene, it was skewed towards these two guys that won everything in the world.
Oh.
And then it lost support, and then it eventually crashed and died. And stuff like that.
Is there any more Warcraft TCG?
No, well, I mean, it eventually became Hearthstone, essentially.
Oh, okay, but they no longer make physical cards.
No.
Now,
but,
are the Hearthstone rules similar to the Warcraft TCG rules?
Yeah, it's pretty close.
Okay, interesting. I didn't realize they were connected.
In fact, they used a ton of the same art. In fact, so they saved a ton of money that way. But anyway, so we did that for a bit, and then I got back in playing Legacy stuff. And so I was spending, I was getting a bunch of stuff and building decks, and we were doing all that stuff and going different places. And then that takes me up to about 2010, and I went to Columbus to an event called a Grand Prix. There was 2,500 people there, and I didn't like it very much at all.
Mm-hmm.
And
was the environment, the playing environment at this tournament different than the ones that you'd been to before?
Oh yeah, because there's like pro players there, and it was for a game that I would like to be fun and enjoyable. Now, I don't want to ever go back to the days when I'm using giant growths and crawl worms and stuff like that.
I do.
Okay, well, I like using powerful cards that do cool stuff, but I don't want the people around me to be jerks about everything and stuff like that. And the reason why when I've tried to play again and I've stopped very quickly is for that exact reason.
Yeah. Well, it's really Magic is set up, unfortunately, to foster that kind of because of the way that timing works in the game.
Yep.
Like people, it's like they expect you to be jerks about everything.
Sure, right.
And so that's of course the big problem that whenever I've tried. Well, there are many things that when I tried to get back into Magic, it did. None of the cards were familiar to me. There were many more mechanics than there used to be.
Right. Oh yeah.
The game was so much more complex. I couldn't use any of the old cards that I liked. Right. I tried to get out the old, the crawl worm and the giant growth and stuff, and it didn't work.
Right.
And so, but it's interesting that although you and I are at very different levels of experience, we had the same experience, just in different places.
Sure. Right. Yeah. But yeah, like last year, when Dan, so Dan
is our friend that is I don't know that he's ever been on Amigos, but he's another one of our friends from high school.
Yeah. And so he lives in an area, he lives in Italy, and he is in an ultra competitive tournament area. In fact, because of that, he goes to all kinds of things, and now he is actually a fairly competent player and stuff like that. I mean, he's pretty good. Because he gets to play with like pro players all the time and is improving his skills. Well, he came here and he was like, "Man, we need to go to some stores." I was like, "Okay," and so I didn't really, in kind of prep of him coming, I didn't have any cards, so I bought stuff to play. And so I go into these events, and so basically I've not played at this point in a few years, and I won every event that I played in. So that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool.
That is cool.
And we were talking about, and I felt really bad because I told this guy, and who literally that's all he does in his free time is play Magic. And he's played basically as long as I started. I mean, so he's been in the game forever. And I told his name was Brandon, and I said, man, I kind of feel like a jerk for just walking in the store after like 2 years of never being in it, not played a single game of Magic, and it was just like stomping everyone in the game. And I was like, there's no reason that should happen, but it did. And so I kind of feel bad about it.
So, I mean, do you think that you just happened to luck into the right meta as far as your deck goes?
That's what it was. Yeah. That's what it was.
And that's another thing too. It's like I remember the only tournament aside from that one that I played in, it was 2006 or 2007. And there was there was this person that had this this forest walk deck that was just like wiping the floor with everybody, and it struck me at the time. I was like, it's not a level playing field like Magic claims that it is, because you can do so many different things and everybody can have their own angle. But if you somehow figure out a way to beat the meta, then
absolutely,
and of course, there are levels of skill within that, but that's really what it's what turned me off Magic is what turned me on to board games. Because with board games, you really are, everybody's using the same stuff. You're not spending a whole lot of money. I never really spent a whole lot. I think the peak of my Magic spending, there was a time, do you remember when I lived in Newport News and I would buy and sell stuff? And I did pretty well at that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think it was because at the time I was one of the few people that would actually scan the cards with a scanner. So there were really good images. But yeah, I think that the high point was when I put together that vintage deck, and I mean, because I had a play set of dual lands. There weren't any of the good ones. They're the red and the green, the volcanic islands.
Well, the red blue one, those are good.
Yeah,
they're pretty expensive now.
Yeah, but I remember you sold those for me, and I made enough money that I bought my DSLR, my first DSLR. So
what was I was going to say something about. I don't remember.
But anyway, so take us up to the present. So right now, approximately how many cards are you sitting on right now?
The 2 I'm selling for you.
Really? You have no other cards?
No, I mean there's like a box of land at home, but I don't have anything.
A box of beta land.
No, it's not beta land. I know I don't have anything playable at all. So. Yeah, I mean, no. If I was still playing a lot of physical board game stuff, I might buy a set of those commander decks and take them so we could play like a multiplayer commander thing, because that's what it's for. But I don't even do that anymore. Right. So
well, I was not a fan of that format anyway, because and this is another problem that I have with Magic. Unless you are on top of the game, if you want to casually play, the person you're playing against is going to get aggravated with you very quickly, because you're like, oh, I've never seen that card. Let me read it. Let me see what it does. And it's not like, Stone Rain, where you look at it, you can read it upside down.
Sure. Well, yeah, it's like a lot of text.
Yeah.
I guess the good thing about it is that like for even without me playing for a lot of those time, I still will like really study some of that stuff just to learn like everything about it, so that I can just look at the art and know, oh, I know what that is.
Oh yeah.
And so I don't have to read this stuff. Besides playing recently with Dan last year, I played a game with a guy at work and some of his friends. And they were like what I call extreme table kitchen casual Magic players. To now though, apparently since my presence, they are not now. They're like ultra hardcore now and stuff. So it's really funny because we were playing Commander and my existence showing up like it's basically like like the first like settlers coming to the Americas, they just like changed the like everyone was happy in their world, and now all this like Ponce de Leon shows up and like everything's different now.
So do you keep track? Do you ever read up on like new TCGs that are coming out and stuff?
Well, I mean, I know there's a game called Exodus that's new. Don't know much about it. I saw some videos that Rudy makes. There's a Final Fantasy game that's supposed to be pretty good. And I think there's a new Dragon Ball game And then I know about Pokemon because Luke likes
Right.
Pokemon cards. But as far as like what he just likes Pokemon cards because they're Pokemon. He has no concept about the game. And honestly, I don't know anything about the game either. I mean, I know like what some of the cards might be worth a little bit, but I mean, I don't. For the most part.
Okay, so like, is there any comparison? Is there any game that's poised to knock Magic off the pedestal?
Not a card game. Hearthstone, yes. Hearthstone is everything that Magic wants to be and did it better, much faster. I mean, and with much more success. So, the a Pro Tour might pull in for the whole season $1 million in prizes. I don't know, 5 million. I don't know, not a lot. A single Hearthstone tournament, like the top winner is like 10 million or something.
Oh my gosh,
like that.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah, I mean it's crazy. Like wow. I mean it's those televised video game things they do now.
Wait a minute, I said it, but I'm not sure what you mean.
Like those video game tournaments where they're like playing and they're on teams and there's like
you like esports sort of things? Yeah.
Yeah, Hearthstone does that and pulls in those kinds of numbers. Like.
Well, I mean, and the thing about Hearthstone is that, I mean, Blizzard is making 100% of the profit. They don't have to share it with anybody. No distributors, no printers, no nothing. It's all them.
Nope. And there's no way to cash out of Hearthstone.
Right. It's genius.
Oh, it is. It is. Yeah.
So to talk a little bit about your Hearthstone time.
Well, it was about a week and a half long. No, it was a little bit longer than that. It wasn't very long though. It was long enough to know that I could spend a whole lot of time and only do that and not do anything else, which is exactly what happened. It was like not sleeping. I'd close my office door and be like, And
I'm exactly the same as you. I had a very hard time being a casual Hearthstone player.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. Yeah. I mean, I just couldn't. In fact, I was grinding everything out to make like the best decks I could. I didn't spend really much money on it. Maybe like $40 to buy some of those like mission packs.
I've spent way more than that.
Yeah. So I did pretty well as far as like
not spending your money.
Yeah. But I mean, I like really quickly to make the best decks I could. So just like in Magic, I was going to websites of looking at like the decks that people were building and were building those decks. And I was like trying to go up in rank. So they tried rank play. And when I stopped, I think I got to rank 8 is when I stopped. So, I mean, for playing about a month and never playing the game, I got to about rank 8.
Now, do you think that your Warcraft experience helped you?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, like I was familiar with like what some of the things did because I'd seen them before. But no, not really.
It was really just the fact that you made it your life for like that short amount of time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that is actually, that's benefited me in a lot of different things that I've done. Yes, I've collected Magic, but we could have mini shows about all the things that I have done in my time.
Yeah.
So
we'll save that for the next insert disc too. All of your mini collections over the years.
If you want to talk about records, man, I got a lot of stories about that. Coins, action figures. I'm the guy that's done it all.
Yeah. Oh, I live vicariously through your collections.
And so it's in fact, I will mention that I listened to this comic one that was done, the last one, and it was a little bit dangerous for me to listen to it.
You kind of got the itch.
I have not. I am watching. I'm watching stuff that I have bought before because I just want to know what the price is doing compared to when I was doing it and that sort of stuff. I don't want to buy it. I really don't. I really don't want to buy it at all because Story in comics is terrible. As much as Aaron thinks it's awesome, it's not cool. Aaron, you'll hear this. It's terrible.
What is it? Story comics?
Storing comics.
Storing comics.
No,
okay.
it's terrible. No, I mean it's not fun.
No.
They're heavy.
Nobody wants a closet full of long boxes.
No. You know, and yeah, and I totally agree with you. Just like looking at
what I'd like to have is like a space on my wall with just some slabbed Golden Age Batman.
Oh well, sure.
And of course, I'd probably take it and immediately sell it if I had that because that's pretty high dollar stuff.
Oh well, yeah. I guess you could get some like really the lame ones where like
Batman's riding a horse.
Batman becomes fat.
Yeah,
those kinds of things. But yeah, like I don't know. But yeah, back to Magic stuff. I mean, it's there's so many things about it that I still like about it, and there's so many things I don't like about it at all. And I always, every time I buy this stuff again, I have these grand dreams about how stuff is going to play out, and it never does that way. It never happens that way ever. That I'm gonna play all the time. Well, I mean, you know, I only get over here like however, you know, and so I
let
mean,
alone like going to a tournament for a whole day.
I mean that stuff doesn't, you know.
Yeah.
So you know, I get to do that when Dan comes here once a year.
Right.
You know?
Or like once every 7 to 8 years.
Yeah, or whatever. Yeah. So it, you know, it doesn't make any sense for me to have that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, borrow it or whatever. You know, but not.
I wish that there could be like a league of Magic players that only played like revised edition. That would be the perfect thing for me.
There is a thing called there is actually that kind of thing. There's a group of people that only play with cards before 6th edition and with pre 6th edition rules. That is a thing.
That's me.
That is a thing.
Because I know the card. That's everything else aside. It's really just knowing the cards.
Sure,
there's nothing worse than feeling helpless because you don't know what the things do.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so that would be, if there was a group around here that did that.
Yep.
I probably would not be involved, but in my mind it would be a cool thing to be involved with.
Yeah. I think that. But I know that there's a thing like that because I've read about it. So.
It's sort of like it's sort of like people that are into model trains in the Magic world. It's like you're old people that
yeah.
But well, folks, if you are still with us by some miracle, and you would like to dive deeper into the world of Magic as investment and as collectible, then Chad and I have recorded some additional content that I'm going to insert right as soon as I say this word. Boom! All right. So, you know, it's been a long time since I seriously played Magic.
Right, sure. Yep.
I mean, I got back into it. I think there were 2 separate times when I got back into it. Mm-hmm. The first time was when I moved to Newport News in like 2006.
And so Dan.
Yeah, and then when I was with Dan. And then the second time was when Kamigawa came out. Which might have been this. Is that around the same time?
It's probably around.
So maybe it's only barely been one time back in.
Sure. Right.
So what would you say has changed the most? Not really since that time, because I don't really count that, but since the last time I was really involved, which would have been like around the time of Homelands.
Oh, I mean, it's like barely the same game, really. I mean, because it's like even the rule set, even then, isn't even the same rule set at that point. Because they changed 6th edition. They redid the rules entirely, basically, in the game. And so the first time, I mean, I guess it kind of functioned a little the same way, but I mean, it was like way different. So there was that was happening, and then you know, you had a change with like art stuff, so the cards looked different. You had a shift in terms of power, too. So, a long time ago, creatures were garbage, and spells were good. And now it's shifted around to where spells are garbage and creatures are good. So, it's like had a total shift.
It's funny because when I was looking through as I was contemplating getting all the beta commons,
Right.
I was just looking at them and I loved every card because every card was immediately apparent to me what it did.
Sure.
And there were no like weird, like I don't even think banding was a thing back. Did they have banding back then?
Oh yeah. Banding. That was when banding existed. That was like a thing.
Is banding not around anymore?
No. They only use it if they do some kind of weird like rift traveling through like the lore, and they end up in a world in which banding existed. Like I think they did it maybe for this thing that came out in March or so called Dominaria. So Dominaria is the world where the original Magic stuff was happening. So,
okay.
Because you're talking about these planes, and so they go.
It's like alternate worlds.
Yeah, correct.
Things.
Yeah.
Do they still set you up like they used to, where they say there's 2 wizards on a hilltop and you're casting down?
I mean, probably not. I think they've given up that aspect of it, and they just say it's a game.
You're sitting across the table with a very expensive playmat.
Yes, pretty much.
So, we were talking about how the cards have gotten a lot more expensive lately, and so do you think that it's people? Do you think that you said, but at the same time that in your opinion and in other people's opinions, the game is also it's not really on an upswing either.
No, and so interesting enough, that is what is driving the prices of older stuff up, because people don't have confidence in new product now. And so they're turning to stuff that they do have confidence in, which is reserve list cards that can't be reprinted, that are only going to have less and less copies each year as time goes on. So they're going to naturally go up in price. Yeah, and that's what's really happening.
But I mean, these cards, like, what percentage of Magic players do you think actually play in these, like, vintage tournaments?
Oh, I don't think probably a lot at all. I think it's becoming a thing now where it's we're talking about like trading as you would at a market level, and that's what's really happening. I mean, it's as you've now seen, there's a whole website that looks like you're tracking stocks, but you're just tracking card prices, MTG Goldfish, and so. I don't think it's players necessarily.
So do you think there's a lot of people that are involved in the Magic trade that have no interest in Magic the game?
Yeah, because
I mean, or maybe very little interest in it.
Sure, okay. So, like for instance, if you buy, well, okay, I can give you some real world numbers. In 2000. Probably 12. I was talking up this guy at work, and he wanted to buy a box of cards, because I talked about the price of old boxes and it's a good money maker. So at the time, Tempest came out in 97, and it was a pretty decent price. It was like you probably get it for $250. Okay. And the reason why Tempest was such a good box to get, it had an uncommon in it that was $100 at the time. It was a card called Wasteland. And so I was like, buy a box of Tempest, we'll crack it open, and we'll sell the singles out, and we'll make money. Which would have been an awesome idea, except the box had no Wastelands in it. So you'd think, okay, you got 15 cards a pack, 36 packs. You have 3 uncommon slots. You're like, okay, well, I should get a Wasteland. Well, yeah, we didn't get any Wastelands. So the box, I think it made like $175. So it almost
broke even.
Yeah, it was, but we were still short. Now the box, though, if he'd held it, is $1,000 box.
So really, it always pays to keep the box sealed.
Yeah, especially old products, yeah, for sure. Especially any box that has reserve list cards. So we're talking about things made from 93 when the game first came out to 98, I think.
Was that the last year that there was? What's the very last card on the reserve list?
Well, the last set is Urza's Destiny. So it's like 98, 99, something like that. So yeah.
So what would you say are the big the big mountaintop moments of Magic, like in terms of like the things that are really important that have happened. Like that's obviously one of the high points. Is like this was the last set where there was a reserve list card.
Well, so you have, well, I mean, I don't know.
So obviously, like like between Unlimited and Revised, that was that was probably a big break because there were no more Power 9.
Right. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And so the next, maybe the big next thing would be the invention of the reserve list, which corresponds to the release of Chronicles, which tanked value of like tons of cards. So that's why they made the reserve list.
So the reserve list was in existence all the way back after it was created as a result of the backlash against the people hating.
Yeah, 95. Okay. Yeah,
I didn't realize that at the time.
Yeah, because you had things like stuff from Legends, like all the Elder Dragon Legends, that used to be like $70, and now were $1.
Right.
So they were worthless for a very long time. So you have that. You had the rules change in 96, 97. You had I don't know when the art style changed. That's probably like 2001. So when they made the new frame, you had one of the biggest things that happened was the introduction of planeswalkers. So that happened in Lorwyn, which is, I don't know, 2007 or 8 or something like that. So they made a whole new card type, and that was a huge deal, And then most recently, they started adding these things called lottery, well, not really lottery cards, but they were like ultra, super premium versions of cards that have existed through time with totally new art style and everything that were pretty rare in terms of in a box.
So are these like foil cards?
Yeah, they're foil, but they're not even like normal looking foil, and they're not even normal looking cards. Like one set they made last year maybe, they look like hieroglyphics. So, I mean, they really...
Is it kind of like with the land when they stopped putting like tap to add this to your mana pool? It's like, it's just the whole thing is the picture?
Well, no, there's words on it, but it's like weird looking. I mean, you have to see the things. I mean, they're just really crazy. And they started doing that. So that was a pretty big change. There's some other stuff just kind of as far as gameplay goes that's kind of changed the way that stuff has... the invention of Modern as a format, that was 2011, I think.
Okay, because what I remember is like you have like Type 1, which is like everything.
Yeah.
And then Type 2, which is like the most recent base set and the last 2 expansions.
Yeah.
And then there was like Type 2 Extended, which was like the last 4 or something like that. So they don't have any of that anymore, right?
No, so so you still have the vintage thing, which is like the Type 1. And then they made a format called Legacy, which that's been around a while. And so Legacy basically is kind of like Vintage, but it's got, instead of restricted cards, it has banned cards. And it's still old cards too. And then you have Modern, which, like I said, starts 8th edition, whatever year that is, forward. And so you have that. And Standard still is the same rule with like rotating sets and all that stuff like that.
Do you think that is Standard still the most popular tournament format?
Oh yeah, absolutely, because the cards are currently available, and they're in print now, so they haven't risen in price like crazy yet. Because I mean, you're talking about Modern cards, for instance, aren't very old, and some of them were just in Standard not that long before, but because of the popularity of Modern, the prices are really high. I mean, there's like Modern cards that are over $100
now. But I guess when you're collecting as investment, though, that's the probably the worst thing, right? Because these are going to be cards, when they cycle out, they're going to fall in value, right?
Yeah, that's typically the way it works. I mean, the card's got to be really good to make an impact in a bigger card pool like Modern or Legacy or whatever. So the thing about when you're talking about like, I guess, the power levels of cards. So they don't want to make anything too powerful in Standard that's going to warp the game and cause bannings. But it still happens, though. But and more so recently than any time in a long time. But the card pool is pretty small. But when you're going to like say modern, where you're increasing the card pool by 8 times, there's a lot to compete with, and it may not be nearly as good, kind of a thing.
Right. So, out of all of the cards that are the very high dollar cards in Magic, let's just give, for people that aren't aware, the most valuable single card, is it still the Black Lotus?
Absolutely.
And so, what is the right combination of Black Lotus? Like, what set is the most valuable?
Alpha.
And Alpha Black Lotus is the most expensive card.
Yeah. I don't know. I know what the unlimited is because I just looked at it this week. It's like $7,000. I don't know what an alpha one is. It's probably double at least, maybe.
Okay. And so would you say that at what point are there any cards that are really valuable but are not played often?
Oh, a ton.
A ton?
Yep. And it's reserve list stuff. I mean, that's what it is. There's stuff that's like garbage, but because it can't ever be reprinted again, people have called buyouts and then artificially increase the price to where now it's like a card that should be $1 or $5 or whatever is, $250.
So what's an example of like a garbage card that they've decided to put on there?
Let me think what it's called. There is, Invoke Prejudice. Okay, it's from Legends. First of all, it's like, this is a sign of the times. There were no way they would ever make this card ever at all. They're these spirits in the art, and they kind of look like they're wearing like KKK uniforms. And that card is really dumb. I mean, it costs 4 blue.
Oh, it's called Invoke Prejudice. So do you think they were actually going for the KKK
feel? They absolutely were. And so it's like, and it's, I don't even know how, I mean, the last time I looked, it was like over $300 now. It should not be that much. I mean, it's just a weird card, but it can't be reprinted, and so it's a rare, I think, so it's now valuable.
What is a card that they put on the reserve list that you think they shouldn't have, that you should be allowed to reprint?
Well, there's honestly a lot, because if you look at the list, it's really random. I mean, there's things that should be that's not. So, like, for instance, Demonic Tutor isn't. It should be because it's really good, but it's not. But then there's like things like I don't know, like Black Carriage Riders or something from Homeland. I don't know. So it's it doesn't make any sense.
Do they ever release any rationale for why?
Nope. They just randomly pick cards off of the set.
And do they add cards to the reserve list every year?
No, basically the list is the list.
Okay.
So up to what happened is each set until that 99 year, they were adding new cards because they were adding cards from each set. So, but
like they would add, like a set would come out and they'd be like, this card is now on the reserve list.
Correct.
So that's kind of crazy.
Yep.
Because that would really cause the card value to spike, like while the set was still in print, right?
Well, back in 97 or whatever, no one cared about that though. I mean, like the card values were really not like they are now at all. I mean, the oldest stuff was worth money. But I mean, like for instance, 2004. Yeah, it was 2004. I was buying Power, okay? So I was buying like Moxes and all that stuff like that. So I think I was buying them at probably like $300 a piece or something like that. And so that was the expensive card. I mean, a Lotus, I had a chance to buy a Lotus, I remember, in 2003, and I was like, well, I could get other stuff instead. Like $700 is a lot for one card, so I didn't buy it. So now though,
It's 10 times that much.
It is, exactly. And all that stuff is like 10 times what it was back, less than, we're talking about 15 years ago. It's like a lot more now.
Mm-hmm.
So
if you're, say that you're like me and you really have no interest in playing Magic ever again, but you're still fascinated by the cards because it's part of your youth.
Sure.
And you like the idea of investment for potential loss because that's what I do.
Right. Sure.
And
right.
so, what is your advice to somebody that wants to break in to the Magic scene as a collector with an eye on value to the future?
Don't try and do it all at one time, because you'll put too much in, and you'll need to get out faster than you can, and you won't be able to recoup anything. So I think you need to start probably smaller and like build it over time.
Do you have a specific instance in which you made a purchase that ended up not having the outcome that you thought it would?
Oh, probably more than I can think of. But I've had really good ones too.
Mm-hmm.
I had one. So I used to when I was like 2010 and stuff like that. I wasn't really playing very much, but I loved buying and I loved selling and trading.
Right.
So that's what I did. I mean, that's like basically all I did. So one of my friends who he still plays and he still has a really great collection. Like he kept. While I was doing all the buying and selling all the time, he just
bought and kept.
He just kept.
Mm-hmm.
So now he has, like, I guess you would call a very nice portfolio that,
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, he had this thing that was, it was pretty valuable. It was like $300. So 2010, $300 card's pretty good,
Mm-hmm.
There aren't too many in that price range. So he wanted this other card, and it was about the same price. And I was like, well, let's get rid of this other card. And the card was called Imperial Seal.
That's the one he wanted?
That's the one he didn't want.
Okay,
or that's the one he had. The card he wanted was called Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale from Legends. It's land.
Is it one of the legendary lands like Pendlehaven?
Yes, correct. Yeah. So he wanted that land. And I said, well, let's get rid of the Imperial Seal. And he goes, oh man, I don't know. It's really cool. And I'm like, all right, well, where do you use it at? And he goes, well, I had it in this Commander deck, which is like a format. It's like a multiplayer format. So I said, well, do you play that deck anymore? Well, no, I took it apart. So I'm like, well, do you play Vintage? No. I'm like, so you have a card that you don't use right now, and you have a card you want to get that you can use. And he goes, right. So it's all right. Well, I know where I can get a Tabernacle right now. I'll call up Cool Stuff, which I did. So, having 3 people basically buy from Cool Stuff for 15 years has built up a pretty good rep for us. Mm-hmm. So I could literally call up the phone. I'm like, hey, listen, this is Chad. I have a card I want to send in. I want to buy this card too. And will you hold it for me until the buy comes in? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. So they took it off the site, they held it, and we bought the card. Well, the Imperial Seal, this was a Chinese one. So that's that set I was talking about. It was like just released in a couple areas. So it's Chinese one. So it's not even like the rarest one of it. Now, it's probably like $500. So it's went up, really $200, something like that. Maybe $600 now. I don't know. The Tabernacle is about $3,500. So I made him a whole lot of money. Like now. Is
the golden rule just always go older if you can?
Absolutely. Yeah, like that you watch that channel Alpha Investments, Rudy. I mean, he only wants old cards. Mm-hmm. Like when he buys collections, he only will buy people's collections if it contains old cards.
Right.
He doesn't want to buy new cards because he doesn't feel any future in them.
Mm-hmm. So what's specific? Like say that you had $500 and you wanted to sink it into something Magic related.
Yep.
Do you think that obviously
I'd probably buy sealed product.
You think that that's the
Yep.
that
I think so.
you're going to be better off buying a box, however many boxes of something.
Even if it's newer, you buy sealed product because the trend is always, even on the most garbage of garbage sealed product, is that it goes up.
So you think that's better? That's better than the Beta Commons set?
Well, I don't know if it's better. It's just different. Like those Beta Commons. There's a lot of ifs that, like, looking at the auction, I cannot. So he says that they're all near mint. Okay. Well, the pictures are garbage in it. I don't know if you looked at it. They're all far away.
Right.
So you can't tell if they've been sharpied, which is a very high likelihood in beta cards.
Really?
Oh yeah, because I mean, how many cards from 1993 have never been played?
Right.
I mean, that's.
Is it? I mean, what with a sharpied card? Are you like? You can tell in the light, like if
not even that. Well, yeah, I mean, even if like let's say they colored the whole border black, so they did a great job, and maybe it's like some kind of matte thing and you can't tell. All you have to do is turn on the side and look at the edge. If the edge is not white, if it's black, then it's been sharpied. Yeah.
So there's definitely, when you're buying older singles, especially with not great photos, there's a lot of unknowns.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Have you ever been burned before? Like, have you ever bought something thinking that being in a situation like that?
Oh yeah, I'm almost certain that I bought a rebacked card from a while ago. So rebacked, there was these sets called Collector's Edition that came out in
the gold border.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. So what they do is they could like slice off the top layer and reback it to a beta card or whatever, and so I think I bought a rebacked card one time.
So because the printing process for these cards were exactly the same except for the gold border.
Yeah, well, there's a little bit difference. There's some color variations, so you can almost always tell a rebacked, because if you put them side by side, you can. There's like a boldness difference with the collector's edition versus the regular editions.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I guess that makes sense. So
yeah. The other talking about those sealed product, I said I'd get sealed product. When you're talking about when you get to a certain time, though, you have to then worry about the resealing of boxes. And I think you were talking about watching a video about them resealing.
But if you're buying, I guess if you're buying sealed product from a distributor, you don't have to worry about that. But the worry comes from when you go to sell it. Does the seller believe, or does the buyer believe?
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, I think if you're buying, like if I buy something within the last few years, it being resealed is probably not a big deal. But when you're talking about product in that late 90s period, which isn't like the super old stuff, but it's still accessible products, have they really resealed those boxes? Because there's like a video of a guy who got a box from 98, Urza Saga. It was definitely resealed because all the packs were like the most garbage of garbage cards of all time. So what they did is they opened a box until they got a good card, and then put the rest of the card, and then they kept doing that until they made a box of like just the likelihood of bad rare is pretty high.
Yeah. So do you think that you're better off? I mean, obviously, if you buy a box of an older set, it's just you as long as you're buying from a trusted source.
Yeah, I think you're fine.
Okay, right?
Yeah, I think you're fine. So as much flack as like people give that Rudy guy just because they do, I'd buy from him like all day because I think he has the back.
Now, does it ever make sense to buy from a place like Cool Stuff over eBay?
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely. Sometimes there'll be I think the online stores try to keep up on trends, but sometimes they can't do it like lightning fast, and there'll be things overnight where people are trying to do buyouts on things, and they may not hit certain stores, and so you can potentially pick up some items on the low if buyouts are happening.
So what if I tried to buy the beta common set on Cool Stuff?
Well, first of all, they're not going to have most of it in stock, and well, if you did, you'd get 15% off. I know that.
Oh, because you've got that.
Yes,
you've
correct.
got that awesome rep.
Yeah, yep. So you'd get a discount. I don't know. You'd have to look.
Yeah, I was just wondering about that.
I don't think you could get everything. I don't. You know.
So Cool Stuff doesn't keep everything in stock. They just there's very high turnover, especially with singles.
Yeah, I mean, like they carry all the new stuff, and I mean they'll go out of stock, but they get new stock all the time. But there's probably not a lot of people selling beta commons to them, I would guess.
Because they just think they'll be able to get a better deal selling them individually on
on eBay. You're talking about, you sell to a store, you're probably getting, most of the time, it's like probably whatever the market price is, like probably 50 to 65%, I would guess, on it. So, it's not anywhere close to full price.
Yeah. All right. Well, Chad, thank you for joining us on this very special Magic edition of Insert Disc 2.
Sure. Oh, I should also mention that I don't play the game either. I haven't played it for a little while. I played it, I guess, a couple weeks last year when Dan was here. But I mean, I don't, like, just for everyone listening, I don't actually play the game either. But I also have an interest in just like the market aspect of it too. So
cool. All right. Well, we'll see you guys next time. Until then, adios.